Hello, hello, adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Today we will be discussing the least frightening member of the Fire Nation's elite group. Also, the only bender of the Fire Nation's elite group, Princess Azula. So, let's jump right into it, shall we? Starting with her strength statistic. That was close. That was really close. Starting with her strength statistic. Strength isn't really important to her. So because of that, I'm going to put it at relatively low. Right? She's not weak, but she doesn't fight with her strength. She fights more with her ability to move around and her ability to think things through. So, the only time I can think of when Azula does fight with a purely strength-based fighting style is, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. We should be good. The final Agni Kai between Azula and Zuko, when they're both throwing linear movements towards each other, but Azula is kind of fighting the way Zuko used to fight, which was attack first and ask questions later. And she does so very well, right? But that's not really her fighting style. That's her going through a lot of things at once, culminating in the change of her fighting style in the end. So, with the exception of that, her strength is going to be relatively low just because it's not necessarily important to her. I'm putting it at 10 to 12, with 14 being feasible as well. Something along those lines. Moving into the dexterity score. This is Azula's main fighting score. She's constantly seen doing flips and dodging strikes and things of that nature. For instance, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. Should have waited more in the pauses between numbers, but we should be good now. The Day of the Black Sun, when she flips through a small hole in a wall that wasn't a wall to begin with. It's the fun of earthbending. She flips through a small hole, which was made even smaller by the fact that Sokka was in the middle of that hole as well. And of course she lands with grace after having flipped. So, that sort of thing. And that is just like, she's jumping through a small hole and landing with a flip. That's very dexterous. Then the fact that she's able to dodge strikes, like in the drill tank episode, when she's dodging not only strikes that Aang is making towards her, but strikes that are being hurled from the Earth Kingdom soldiers above. They're dropping boulders down onto the drill tank in a vain attempt to stop it. So that sort of thing. Those two reasons combined is why Azula's dexterity stat is going to be 18 to 20, really. 16, essentially 16 through 20, just kind of depending. Moving into the Constitution score. Yeah, Constitution doesn't really come up a whole lot in the show. I don't know if you've noticed. It seems to be a recurring theme here. It's one of those, I would assume, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, should be good. This isn't really a spoiler, I figured I'd just cover my bases there. I would assume that wielding lightning is going to be very difficult and draw on your internal systems quite a bit, but at the same point in time, it might not. It might just be something she can conjure. So, hi if you would like, but at the same point in time, it's kind of there, not really a statistic that's important to Azula. So I'm putting it for the sake of this at 10, just because I don't, like, she's not necessarily lacking worse for wear when it comes to Constitution, but she's also not, you know, a dwarf. Should I have said spoiler alert for that?
Nah.
I should be fine. It's okay. If anything, I was just going to spoil what I was saying, but you'll get over it at some point.
Will I?
I was talking to the viewers. I don't care about you.
I don't either.
It got really real fast.
Yep.
Hope you know I'm glad you're here, Chill. Moving into intelligence. Getting away from that mess. Azula is very smart. Smarter than I think a lot of people give her credit for. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. She's smart enough to know how to get Zuko essentially to go with her, right? She knows what he wants, and she knows how to get him to agree with her. Like when she was taking him home after telling him that his father wanted him back, even though he hadn't captured the Avatar. He knew all he wanted was, or she knew all he wanted was to be loved by his father, and she used that against him. Or when she learns from the taking down of the drill tank from the inside, she learns and uses that to take down Ba Sing Se from the inside, being the first person to successfully infiltrate Ba Sing Se. That sort of thing. She thinks through pretty much everything. Again, with the Day of the Black Sun episode, when she knows that the people that were fighting her, Sokka, Toph, and Aang, wanted to get to Fire Lord Ozai. They didn't care about Azula. They wanted to get to the Fire Lord, to kill him when they had a chance. And she knew that that's what they wanted. So she knew that she needed to stall them as long as she could. Which will bring us into our next stat here in a second, but first the score. Her intelligence is really high, 18 to 20. Moving into the wisdom, she knew that, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, same spoiler, I was just talking about it. She knew that the group wanted to know where the Fire Lord was, and she knew that Sokka was going to want to stick around and talk a little more when Azula mentioned Suki. It's the wisdom of knowing what Sokka wanted and knowing how to use it against him and then doing it that takes that from intelligence into wisdom. So there is that. Then you have the fact that Azula was wise enough to realize that she needed help to accomplish her goal of taking down Ba Sing Se. She needed her group, the elites that I was talking about a minute ago. She needed Mei and Ty Lee. She knew that Mei was going to want to go with her just for the adventure of it. She also knew that Ty Lee was going to need a little bit more enticing because Ty Lee was happy where she was. And because she knew that, she walked into the situation with a plan to get Ty Lee to go with her. She put the plan into action very effectively. So because of that, I'm putting Azula's wisdom score relatively high at 16 to 18 as well. Moving into charisma. Oh boy. Oh boy. Her charisma stat is not very good. And you say, but what about when she, tricks Zuko into going home by what I just mentioned a minute ago, by telling him that the Fire Lord wanted him there? And to that I say, yes, but remember how I gave that example in intelligence and wisdom? There's a reason for that. Her true charisma is more accurate with the Ember Island episode. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. We should be good. Oh boy. That's all I have to say. It's just not good. It's not good. That might be the second worst scene for charisma in the entire show, directly after the Secret Tunnel episode with Aang and Katara. So now you know what, without spoiling what's said and what happens, now you know about where it is in the level of bad at charisma. So we're just going to leave it at that. We're going to say 10 to 12. The only thing keeping it from being negative is the fact that Azula knows how to talk to people to get them to do what she wants. And that's a stretch. It really is. Moving into racing class, straightforward build. It's always straightforward build first. Yeah. Azula's a Goliath. Just kidding. I needed something to keep this fresh from not being the same thing every time. So yeah, human, obviously. Specifically human variant for her race. You get +1 to 2 different ability scores. Then you get a skill of your choice. I recommend something along the lines of deception for lying to Zuko and that sort of thing, or acrobatics to mimic the flips and things of that nature. Then you have the feat. What was the feat?
The feat spell sniper.
Yes, thank you. This is for her, because usually I do skilled, and that's the only thing that came to mind, and I knew that was wrong. Skilled works too, but Spell Sniper is better, because you get a cantrip from, we're going to go with a wizard spell list, although you have a few other options. I should have said spoiler alert there, but whatever. Then you have the ignoring of up to 3/4 cover, along with double the range for a ranged spell attack. So, yes, all three things, that's any ranged spell attack, by the way. All three things are very good for casters, especially when you're targeting someone like one would be doing a lot with firebending. Just kind of a thing that I've noticed in the show. Then you have the class. I spoiled this a second ago. We're going to go wizard, specifically evocation, right? With an emphasis on fire and light-based spells. So, fire, light, and lightning-based spells, actually, because Azula can control lightning. It's important to note that lightning and thunder-based spells are two different spells. So, Thunderclap and Thunder Wave, no. Those are thunder-based spells, not lightning. However, Chain Lightning, Wall of Fire, and even Sunburst, I would argue, as a DM, are able to be cast by an Azula playthrough, because firebending is based on the sun in the show, just as waterbending is based on the moon in the show. So even though Sunburst does radiant damage, I would allow it because it is sun-based. But I guess DM's discretion is advised there. Moving into the conceptual build. For the race, Fire Ganassi makes sense. Resistance to fire, fire-based spell casting, kind of makes sense there. Then you have High Elf, also makes sense. +1 to intelligence modifier. Then a few different things from, you get all of the basic elf traits like Dark Vision and Dexterity +2. Trance is useful just in general. That doesn't necessarily fit with the show, but it's useful. And then for High Elf specifically, you get... It was an extra cantrip from the wizard spell list, isn't it?
Indeed.
Cool. Couldn't remember if it was specifically wizard or if I'd chosen that because it went with the wizard class from earlier.
Yeah,
it's wizard spell list. Then we have the race that Azula is. Tiefling. It makes sense. You get the resistance to fire damage. You have a few fire-based spells from the race bonuses. You get Dark Vision, which is for the show. It's really useful in-game, but it's for the show. But then you add the perception of the Tiefling race into it, and all of a sudden, it makes sense. So there is that. Going with class, or going into class, rather, since Wizard was already used, I wanted to change things up a little bit. Yes, you could do Druid, but it seems a little cheap because, yeah, Druid for a spellcaster, or for like a nature-based spellcaster, yeah, obviously. Not to mention I've used that before, like, said it before many times.
Mm-hmm.
So, I went with Arcane Trickster, which is a rogue archetype. Just so you know. You get the rogue things, which is very nice. So things like sneak attack, hide, dash, disengage as bonus action, that sort of thing. You also gain the ability to cast spells with the intelligence modifier being your spell casting ability. Specifically, you get to pick from the wizard spell list. Now, you don't get up to 9th level. I don't remember the exact level it goes to, but usually it's around 4th or 5th level is when it stops. Just because you're not a main caster, you're technically a rogue, you're not a casting class. You could get up to 6th. I don't remember. I will leave that in the description below, just kind of noting what the max level spell is for the Arcane Trickster. But, yes. You have just access to casting spells. You have more health than wizards. You have more survivability than wizards. All around, it's a really good class to go through. I don't know why people kind of look over it as much as they do. People see Barbarian and instantly go, yes, I want to do that. And I don't know why that's a thing. It's just really common. I mean, I guess it's because it's recognizable. You have to look a little harder to get into Rogue and Arcane Trickster specifically, but...
It's the same thing with races. Everyone goes with human.
True, human or elf,
Or
because
elf.
everyone recognizes it. Yeah, I guess it's true. But, yeah, I mean, even if you're not going to play Azula, look into the Arcane Trickster. It's really useful. As for... I was going to go into items, but backstories next. Yes. Azula was the second born of Ozai and Ursa. Her brother, Zuko, was next in line to be Fire Lord, although that doesn't really matter. Azula is Ozai's favorite child, and Zuko was Ursa's favorite child, which that caused a rift between Azula and her mother, and jealousy between Azula and her brother. I had to make sure that I said that correctly, because that could have been very confusing. Yeah, I said it correctly. So that has essentially led to the banishment of both her brother and her mother. Azula's drive to be her father's favorite is what eventually led to her leaving the Fire Nation Palace to form her gang, and that is where Azula's story begins. So, moving into items now. Unless I missed something?
Nah.
Cool. Moving into items now. The only item Azula really has is the Fire Lord's crown. She does obtain that at some point in the show. Probably should have said spoiler alert there.
Maybe?
It's not really important, is the thing.
Doesn't do anything.
Not really. Well, I'm just saying, like, the fact that she has the crown isn't really that important in the show. It's not really a thing. So, yes, the Fire Lord's crown. This could be magical if the DM wanted it to be, enhancing fire spells. Theoretically, enhancing charisma-based spells, although that doesn't necessarily apply to Azula. Or it could be non-magical and just kind of a way to get into places you shouldn't necessarily be able to go, like just a pass, because you're the Fire Lord, you get to do what you want. Or it could just be for aesthetics, if the DM so decides. It's really all DM's choice. But that is all I have for you fine adventurers today. So, if you liked what you saw, make sure to leave a like down below, and don't forget you can subscribe if you want to see more of this. Just a friendly reminder. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Just make sure to keep it respectful. If you can't possibly wait until my next video, which will be on Ty Lee, you can feel free to check out my Discord and come hang out on Twitch if you so desire. All links to my social media will be down in the description below, underneath the max level, the Arcane Trickster can cast. But you don't necessarily have to. If you want to, feel free to check out my social medias. Aside from that, I will catch you all later.